This is DeGaris, masculist, Mgtow flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and Mgtow, written by and read aloud by Dr. Hugo DeGaris. This is flyer number 344, entitled Masculism Will Hit Women Like a Bus. Description. This flyer predicts that once the masculist virus has infected hundreds of millions of men, women will feel like they had been hit by a bus. So strong and vitriolic will be the male backlash against them, against their fluffy parasitism, their fluffy feminist hypocrisy in the divorce courts, their feminazi bitchery, their monoconscious ignorance, etc. It will be very painful to be a woman in the coming decades as masculism fully asserts itself, taking over gender politics. Masculism Will Hit Women Like a Bus, by Prof. Dr. Hugo DeGaris. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. I've written nearly 350 of these masculist Mgtow flyers, with each flyer expressing some incremental idea relative to the previous flyers. Since there are some 350 of them, obviously there have been many ideas, so that since they are contained in one head, I feel empowered to harangue an obnoxious feminazi witch if I choose to. This empowerment, when multiplied by hundreds of millions as masculist and Mgtow ideas spread throughout the Western world to other men, will cause women to feel that they have been hit by a bus. Such will be the onslaught against them coming from the masculists. This flyer lists how masculists, hundreds of millions of them, all empowered with masculist ideas, masculist viewpoints and ideology, will hit women so hard that these women will feel that they've been hit by a bus, crushing them, destroying them. Before I launch into a list of ways that women will feel they've been hit by a masculist bus, I need to explain why third-wave feminism, in brackets, as distinct from second-wave feminism, which masculists support and promote, since equal legal rights for women is a prerequisite for men to liberate themselves from man-slavery by fluffy parasites, by making it easier for women to fip up, close brackets, needs to be destroyed. Third-wave feminism, that is, a variant of feminism that emphasizes the empowerment of women at men's expense, that is, power gained by women is power lost by men, has become indirectly genocidal, so has to be wiped out. One way to do this, which is an option that remains open, is simply to shoot third-wave feminists in a sex war. But the more benign method, which will of course be tried first by the masculists, is to destroy belief in third-wave feminism by destroying the credibility of its core beliefs. How have these feminists become genociders? Because they've taken over the divorce courts and made them so toxic for men, and hence have made marriage such a shitty deal for men that in many Western countries now, 2/3, and probably within a decade, if the gender laws are not men-fared, then over 90% of young men under 35 will be refusing to marry, rejecting paternity, a huge issue, and spending their money on themselves. Thus these feminazis, so hated by the masculists, are indirectly wiping out whole populations, so obviously have to be stopped. Plan A of the masculists to do this is to give men masculist intellectual tools, masculist ideas, to arm them on an assault against third-wave feminism that is so powerful, so formidable that it does not survive. The most formidable enemy of the third-wave feminists are the masculist scientists, who are out to destroy the intellectual foundations of the core ideas of the feminists by showing that these ideas are incoherent, which fail to stand up to scientific scrutiny, so that once most men, and nearly all educated, intelligent men, are familiar with this masculist critique, will be able to use these critiques to smash feminazi bitchery whenever and wherever they come across it, until third-wave feminism dies out due to too few women believing in it anymore, or who are too afraid to state publicly that they are third-wave feminists due to the power of the negative reaction their statement would bring, especially from potential husbands that they hope to manslave and parasite on so that they can have babies. This flyer now lists a handful of the major ways in which women will feel they have been hit by a bus in terms of the level of vitriol coming from the masculists, hundreds of millions of them, from nearly all the young men they come across in their young lives, etc. As usual, I'll give a bulleted list first and will elaborate on them later. Here's a handful of such ways. 1. Women's self-pride will be crushed by masculist science. 2. Fluffies will be ostracized by society, causing massive pain to them. 3. Young female high schoolers will come under enormous moral pressure to fip up or be ignored and shunned by their male classmates who will be masculists. 4. Monoconscious feminists will be violently verbally attacked by masculists for being indirect genociders and seen as bigots. 5. The strength of the masculist backlash against women will feel like a tsunami, a massive tidal wave that washes over them, drowning them, silencing them, so that they are forced to grow up, to fip up, to become moral, instead of the child-minded, hypocritical ignorami that they are today. There are many more points I could add with further thought, but 5 points is a good start. Now for the elaborations. 1. Women's self-pride will be crushed by masculist science. I notice, when I read feminist literature, that there's an overwhelming need for women to feel that they are the equals of men, that anything a man can do, a woman can also do. It's only recently, over the past half-century, that large numbers of women have entered the workforce. Women did not evolve to understand and manipulate the world the way men did, because women did not evolve to hunt. Women evolved to manipulate men, to sexploit them. Women even evolved to be prostitutes to men, to be better able to persuade men to give women and their babies scarce male-hunted meat, especially in times of starvation, when death was just one missed meal away. Thanks to the male inventions, the contraceptive pill, household gadgets, higher education, modern male medicine, long life expectancies, women who have their 2 kids will still have a career window of half a century, so had moved into the workforce into a role that they were not evolved for, so are at a disadvantage relative to men who were evolved to understand and manipulate the world. Men become exasperated and frustrated at the shortcomings of women in the workplace and express these feelings, resulting in women being on the defensive, desperately trying to prove to men that women are men's equals in the workplace, capable of performing at male levels and constantly failing to do so, so that there's a lingering doubt in women's minds that maybe they are not men's equals. Women look around them and see most of the major achievements in modern life are male achievements, and so feel inferior. Feminism then comes along, which preaches, rather than teaches, to women that women are men's equals, and get offended when men scoff at such claims. Masculine scientists, who are out to destroy third-wave feminism for the reasons given above, have no patience with this feminazi, anti-scientific nonsense and destroy it mercilessly, haranguing these feminazis, dismissing them as is-cyanate fairies, in brackets. Is-cyanate equals unable to think scientifically due to ignorance of science. Fairies equals living in a fairyland, believing what they want to believe without evidence, making them no better than religionists or flat earthers or creationists. Masculine scientists ram home to these third-wave feminists that women are dumber than men by 4 IQ points on average, have a 10% lower IQ variance, have 10% smaller brains, in brackets, the most damning fact about women, close brackets, have much lower testosterone levels than men, so are much less aggressive, less ambitious, less dogged, less persistent, so give up more easily with difficult tasks. So it is men who have won 99% of the science Nobel Prizes and dominate the entries in the Who's Who books. Masculine scientists also point out the irrationality of another core idea of the feminists, namely that the patriarchy needs to be destroyed. By patriarchy, these feminists are talking about the general male dominance of men in positions of power, of influence, of ideas, of respect, of achievement, etc., and want to bring it down by increasing the level of women's power. The feminists have managed to do this in a domain that is very important to them, that is, in the divorce courts, where they dominate, bringing their female standards to divorce court decisions, which has created so much chaos that the injustice inflicted on men in the divorce courts will eventually be the main cause of feminism's downfall. The masculine scientists point out that the patriarchy is largely caused by women due to women's hypergamy, that is, the female instinct to mate up, to get the superior DNA of a superior male for her kids, so that her kids have DNA superior to hers, which is good for the species, so was inherited. A classic example of women's hypergamy is the idea that a female doctor will not date a male plumber, because his genes are not good enough for her kids, so she tries to date her equal or better, her superior, for example, a surgeon or an affluent medical specialist. The masculine scientists tell women that hypergamy is largely caused by women, that it is genetically based and will not go away, since women have been sexually selecting men with women's monopoly on which man gets to ejaculate in her, and her sexual selection for men who were taller, bigger, stronger, fiercer and smarter than her for over 1 million years. So, of course, just as peahens have been sexually selecting peacocks with large feather displays, men today are taller, bigger, stronger, fiercer and smarter than women, because women, with their monopoly control of reproduction, wanted things that way. Taller, bigger, stronger, fiercer men would be more likely to be able to defend her against other such males, and smarter men made better hunters, who brought home the meat with greater frequency, so that she and her babies could survive, given that she could not hunt, that is, running around for days on end after game, far from the family cave, because she had to stay at home with her babies and toddlers. Women have always been parasites on men. Masculine scientists also tell women that the other major factor causing the patriarchy is the genetic phenomenon of GMV, greater male variance. That is, men have only one X chromosome in their cells, which is one of the largest, and the Y male chromosome is one of the smallest, so that a greater variety of genes get expressed in men than women, who have 2 X chromosomes, so that only the dominant genes on the female chromosomes get expressed, suppressing the much larger number of recessive genes. Men thus have a greater variance on anything measurable, for example in IQ, that is 10% greater, so it's to be expected that men have won 99% of the science Nobel Prizes. Speaking more generally, women invent almost nothing, build almost nothing, create almost nothing. Men have only tolerated women for their 2 traditional monopolies of vagina and womb, but male engineering genius will soon supersede these 2 monopolies with their creation of sex bots and artificial wombs, so that soon men will prefer to sex their bots and grow their own kids, forcing women into deep depression as most men reject and ignore them. Thus 2 of the core ideas of the feminists, that is, 1, the equal ability of the 2 sexes, and 2, that the patriarchy should be destroyed, are demolished by masculine scientists. When these feminists object to such masculine refutations, their silent ignorance will only cause the masculine scientists to become all the more hostile towards them, haranguing these ignorant feminazis with greater venom and contempt. The ideological onslaught coming from masculine scientists will feel like being hit by a bus for these silent feminazis. As a result of this, women's self-pride will be crushed. Women will be forced to accept their inferior status and their inferior contribution to society due to the force of the masculine scientists' critique. Women, like blacks, will be forced by science to accept their inferior intelligence, their greatly inferior contribution to society due to their genetic inferiority. This will be deeply wounding to women, just as it is to blacks, whom scientists say are the dumbest people in the world, there are 1 billion black Africans who have an average IQ of only 70. Women's inferiority relative to men is much less than that, but still inferior enough so that in all cultures, boy babies are more valued than girl babies, because all cultures know from long experience that boy babies are much more likely to grow up to be highly valued members of the culture, whereas girl babies will grow up to be mere baby factories and childminders, which is vital but not status-worthy, since all women can do those two things. Thus, the rise of masculine science will cause the crushing of women's egos, humbling them, making them less arrogant, less entitled, accepting their inferior status, justified by the evidence presented by masculine scientists who will force women to eat humble pie. 2. Fluffies will be ostracized by society, causing massive pain to them. Masculists see fluffies as vermin to be wiped out, spat at, due to their parasitic nature. Men have given women the contraceptive pill in modern medicine so that women live well into their 80s, so have a career window of half a century. So even if they have their 2 kids, they have a powerful moral obligation imposed on them by the masculists to fit up, to grow up, to get a career-competent education at high school and college, so that they do not become fluffy parasites as adults, expecting to be able to parasite off the money of a man in her 30s when her biological clock is ticking and goes looking around for some gullible man-slave to parasite upon, to pay for her to sit on her fat parasitic ass and raise her kids in a house that he pays for. Masculists see fluffies as immoral, parasitic, man-slaving vermin to be wiped out. Masculists make a close analogy between the Negro slavery of the 19th century in the US and man-slavery in the 21st century. Fluffies are spat at by the masculists, forced to rot on the shelf to extinction, not even pumped and dumped, seen as vermin to be ignored to death, whose fluffy genes are to be removed from the gene pool. Life for fluffies will become intolerable when hundreds of millions of men become infected by the masculist virus, hurling abuse and verbally violent criticism against them, utterly rejecting them for the fluffy manslaving vermin that they are. I would definitely not want to be a fluffy in the coming decades once nearly all educated men have become masculists.